Hello, my name is Daryl Boness, and I'm a commissioner with the U.S. Marine Mammal Commission. I grew up in the 1950s and 1960s, a time when the U.S. and other countries were rapidly advancing the quality of living, increasing industrialization, and the population was increasing, and people were using more resources to support these advances. I think during this period, too many people treated resources as though they were endless and that they were free to be used without thinking about long-term consequences. I grew up in the Midwest and hadn't even seen an ocean until I was 18. I was quite impressed when I first did. At the same time, I started college and had a course in environmental science, as well as other courses in biology. This period began to give me a sense of what was being done to the environment and how we were abusing it and the other living organisms in it. As I went to Canada to do my PhD work, of which I ended up studying seals, I became more aware of issues in Canada than the US. Because of being in Canada until the late 1970s, I did not become fully aware of the Marine Mammal Protection Act until it became a requirement to obtain permits for research conducted during my time as a researcher at the Smithsonian. My first reaction was a selfish one, thinking it was an inconvenience having to apply for a permit. As I learned more about the MMPA, however, I realized how important it was and how forward-thinking those who developed it were. Putting the burden on the user of marine resources, including marine mammals, to obtain approval for their activities seemed like the right approach, especially given the apparent attitude of many people that humans have the right to use the world's resources without worrying about the long-term costs of doing so, or how it impinges on others who disagree with this view. I quickly changed my view about research permits and was happy to do the work necessary to justify doing the research I had hoped to do. During my career as a research scientist at the Smithsonian, and having the privilege of a full-time career in research, I began to realize that I had a responsibility to contribute in some way to the conservation of marine mammals beyond my research, which was mostly focused on questions regarding evolutionary principles and conservation issues. I learned about the Marine Mammal Commission from a colleague and saw that its Committee of Scientific Advisors was a place where I could potentially use my background to make a contribution. In the early 1990s, I contacted John Twist, the executive director of the commission at the time, and indicated my interest in becoming involved. With time, I was given the opportunity to join the Committee of Scientific Advisors, and I did so at the end of 1993. I served in that capacity until 2010, at which time I had the honor of being nominated by President Barack Obama to serve as chairman of the Marine Mammal Commission. I learned during my tenure as a commissioner, of which I'm still serving, that one has an incredible responsibility as a commissioner, but also has the opportunity to ensure that science drives policy making. The MMPA was designed to make things happen this way. Among its strengths, in my opinion, are the belief that we should be using a precautionary approach when the science is not robust enough to provide a clear answer, that the MMC is independent in its ability to operate without political influence from one side or the other, and that it does not have regulatory responsibility, which helps keep it independent in my mind. It is also very insightful in requiring that the commissioners and members of the Committee of Scientific Advisors are vetted for their qualifications by 4 strong scientific agencies of the federal government. This helps prevent politically motivated appointments of non-qualified individuals in these positions. Over the past 50 years, one very important lesson that I've learned is that the need for such a strong piece of legislation has not diminished, but in fact it may have increased. The threats towards marine mammals have not lessened overall, but increased. It is clear that the MMPA has worked in leading to the recovery of some species, but it also has been successful in yielding recovery of others. There will likely always be conflict between those who see regulation, such as the MMPA, as an impediment or unnecessary cost to economic progress and to marine resource use, business, or a way of life. Yet I believe in the absence of such regulation or weaker regulations of this sort, our environment, marine and terrestrial, would be in much worse shape than it is today. I believe that it is essential that the Marine Mammal Commission remains steadfastly independent and devoid of political bias, continuing to use the best available science to guide its recommendations. It needs to take advantage of the opportunity it has been given to have interactions with Congress, to inform them and to provide them advice directly. The MMPA is not without some challenges and might be improved with the right kind of changes. For example, there might be provisions that allow treating species that are doing well differently than those that are not. While there are some provisions for this, they are not easy to use or take an exceptionally long time to implement. It may also be valuable to consider a slight increase in the Committee of Scientific Advisors to allow a broader variety of expertise to help provide advice to commissioners. For example, social scientists and economists might provide useful insights that would help with certain issues facing the Commission. But with such a small committee, it's hard to eliminate other expertise in favor of the social scientists and economists. Overall, however, I believe the MMPA is still a strong and valuable piece of legislation that helps us be good stewards of the marine environment. We all depend upon this happening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide my comments on the value of the Marine Mammal Protection Act 50 years after it was passed.